From a somewhat chilly and overcast Cadiz, Ohio, we are proud to be able to bring you episode 36 of Hometown Huddle on the Harco Media Network. I'm your host, Drake Watson, and I'm glad to have you with us. Before we get started, the trivia question on tonight's show. Trivia is back. The question is, what is stopping you from liking the video, following the page, and subscribing to the page as well? That's a little cheap. That was a little cheap, but we got to do it, and you got to do it. You help us out, we'll help you out on the other end, and that's the way it goes down on Hometown Huddle. With that being said, we've got a ton of baseball tournament and the OHSAA to talk about, as well as softball tournament things, among a couple other things. There are big things happening currently under the behind the scenes at Harco Media Network, so you're going to want to be tuned in the future as well. Sometimes I just say that, and this time it's actually true, but with that being said, let's waste no more time on this May 13th episode, and let's get started on Hometown Huddle.
All the way to the house, and it's going to be a St. Clairsville touchdown. First play of the game. Hello, touchdown Huskies. Wide open, touchdown Ohio Valley.
As you likely know, we are about to embark on a journey that is the 2026 OHSAA High School Baseball Tournament in the state of Ohio. And before we break down some of the matchups, we've got just a large quantity of things to talk about this evening, and hopefully some quality things to talk about as well. One of the things that was interesting to me, especially after the conversation with Coach Velasco of Harrison Central just last week. If you haven't seen that episode, you got time. After this, you could go and find it. It was the most recent episode that we had on Hometown Huddle. But I guess the way that my mind was working was you're looking at the brackets, you're looking at all of these seeds, and then you go back, especially if you watch that episode, and you think, well, these seeds are based on voting and things of that nature. And it's not like football where you have, you have the Harbin points and Joe Idle doing a great job with football and things like that. It's not like the way I think basketball should be, where you use something like Martin RPI. It's coaches voting on it. Now, I think that has its pros, but I also think it has its cons. As Velasco was saying, there is no doubt there is politics that are involved with that. And when you're the head coach, I'm not going to blame the coaches for that, because as a coach, that is in a way your job to give your team the best possible chance to compete in the postseason. And if you are operating under a format that allows you to do that, whether ethical or not, then that's what you need to do, is to give yourself the best chance in the postseason. And so, maybe you think, Team A might be good enough to get this vote from me, to vote them third place or whatever. But if I vote Team B, who I really think is good for fourth place, if I flip those, I might get a more favorable matchup. The bracket might look closer to what I would want it to look like. And again, that's not the coach's fault. That's their job. It's just one of those things, though, that make me think you got to take the seedings with a grain of salt. Now, there are some things that are just glaring and they pop off the bracket when you look at them, and they are quite dismissive because of the nature of some of these teams and the way that they play. I guess translation. If we talk about a team that we're going to bring up later on in the show, like a Highland, we know Highland's good. We know Highland is probably a team that is maybe capable of making another run at a state championship. But, and I don't know that there are many teams that are up to the challenge that is Highland. But again, so there's no question there. But then you have other instances where you look and say, okay, this team is seeded higher, but you never want to play that game with a 4-5 matchup, right? Like, even on the softball side, that there's a really good 1 seed. We'll talk about Beaver Local later on in the show. And, I think they have a pretty good shot against the 9 seed Riverview. I think John Glenn has a good chance to beat Cambridge. So there are instances where, without a shadow of a doubt, okay, number 1 is probably the likely favorite here. But there are other instances where it might not shock some of you to learn that, maybe a 5 seed upset a 4 seed, and that 5 seed may have gone on to go and beat the 2 seed. Or however things are set up. So I think that is an interesting. Now, if it was up to me, I would like to see a system across all sports, in fact, in the state of Ohio and in the state of West Virginia, not far from here, where you, in every sport, have a system to where you have a formula that can accurately bake in your record and your strength of schedule and whatever the balance is. Now, I'm not going to be the person that screams from the top of the hill and says we have to do that. We have to do that now because I'm not providing that formula. I'm not providing the solution to this so-called problem. That's why I'm not necessarily calling it a problem. I'm just saying if I were in charge, that would be what I would probably be focused on day one. Obviously, you got to get the vote of the coaches and things like that, but I just think that anytime you can remove the human element from things like this, that's probably a good thing. And when things are formulaic, then things become more predictable. And maybe that's just me. I like when things are easy to predict, and you can know, okay, because of the formula, because of the math, because of the way things are situated right now, we know exactly what we need to do, and we know exactly where we're going to be on the bracket if we win, if we lose, whatever the case is. But again, that all is to say that sometimes with these seeds, you might have to take them with a grain of salt or a grain of sand, whichever you prefer. Grains of sand aren't too bad if you're at the beach. With that being said, let's finally dive into this Division 3 bracket to start. As we look at the matchup between Tri-Valley and Steubenville, I would like to think that Steubenville has a little bit of an edge here. It would be, I don't even think it would be a hot take to say that Steubenville might be a little bit of a better team than Tri-Valley. But Tri-Valley has, there have been some results. They haven't played well against West Muskingum, but they did beat Dover earlier in the season, who was on the other side of this bracket. And we'll talk about them in a moment. So, and with baseball, especially in the postseason, that you're probably going to get, you're going to see good pitching throughout the course of the tournament. But even then, it's what if that pitcher has an off day and your 2 just threw the other night, or your 2 is banged up or whatever. So now it's a matter of, do we let our 1 keep throwing and, he's just off tonight, or do we risk yanking him and putting our 3 in? And that's all hypothetical. But, that's just to say that these things are very difficult to predict, and that is why you do play the games. But I'm just saying, there's always that opportunity for a lower seed or a team that might not be on paper better than another team. They have the opportunity to beat that team because they are going to meet on the diamond. And that's why they say the games are played on grass or turf or wood, and not this stuff in front of me, not this piece of paper. But I say that to set up that the winner of that game between Tri-Valley and Steubenville will end up playing the 1 seed, Indian Creek. Indian Creek is ranked, I want to say, in the top 5 in their division at the state level. Indian Creek has just really defeated everybody that not literally, but they've badly beaten most of their schedule. Now they've had a little bit of a slump towards the end of the season as they gear up for the tournament. They had a tough loss to Highland in the Mass Classic out at Caddis, but who wouldn't have a tough loss to Highland? But Indian Creek, throughout the course of this season, I remember we were live on Hometown Huddle one night talking about, we got the live result between them and Steubenville when they played the second time, and they ended up beating them 9-5. They beat them even worse than that earlier in the season. And so Creek is 2-0 versus Steubenville. I say that to say that, I don't necessarily see a world where Creek doesn't defeat the winner of the Tri-Valley Steubenville game. But is it going to be intriguing to see Steubenville and Indian Creek on the same playing surface? It always is. It's always one of those good cross-town kind of rivalries that we love here in the Ohio Valley. And as we said, on the other side of the bracket, it's Zanesville and Dover, and the winner of that will play New Philly. Again, I am semi-confident in predicting, I guess. You never want to hear it. We've done it again. I don't think we were half bad on the OVUC baseball championships, but I guess I will loosely predict that you're going to see Creek and New Philly playing for a district championship. So again, that's some intriguing storylines as you look at Division 3. And I'm now stalling because I don't know what to do with this other piece of paper because we're done with it now. So it's going to go down there for the time being. It'll be picked up and put back neatly by the time the end of the night rolls around. Let's look at a little bit of intriguing storylines in Division 5. This is the East District 1 bracket where Barnesville has the 1 seed. The Shamrocks and Coach Butler, who have played incredibly well this season, they're going to await the winner of Union Local and Coshocton. Now, Union Local is the 10 seed, Coshocton's the 8 seed. But again, when teams are that close together, and then you also factor in all the other elements that I spent the first half of the show to this point talking about, that's a game that, in my mind, anybody can win. And we know what Union Local has accomplished this season, and we know who their coach is. We spoke to to Jim Hess on the show not too long ago. We might speak to their rivals at some point. I'm not sure. But if Union Local can defeat Coshocton, they have an opportunity to set up round 3 in a rivalry game between themselves and Barnesville. And that, I guess, on paper, especially heading into the season, Barnesville would be thought of as so much better than Union Local until you realize they played twice this season, as they do most years, and they split. Remember, Union Local is a team that has defeated St. Clairsville and Barnesville in the same season for the first time since anybody can remember, even Coach Hess. And so it would be devastating if Union Local plays one of their best games against Coshocton to punch their ticket to play Barnesville. And then could you think of the chaos that would come from an upset Union Local win over Barnesville? I don't know. Again, on paper, Barnesville's the better team, but you have that rivalry aspect, and you have the element of the fact that Union Local has already defeated Barnesville this season. And, I just say all that to say that would be something of a lot of intrigue if we get to a situation like that. And even if we end up seeing Union Local and Barnesville, we're going to end up discussing it on the show anyway because of the Belmont County rivalry that exists among those two teams. If you want to look at the other side of that bracket in particular, in this East District 1 for Division 5, it would be, I think you'd be wise to say that we're going to expect Ferry to win their game and Garraway to win their game and meet each other for the opportunity to play a Barnesville, a Coshocton, a Union Local, whoever ends up winning on that top side of the bracket. And, part of what makes me feel a little bit more comfortable predicting Ferry and Garraway to advance to the next round and play each other is because I think they're expecting that already. Coach Respect for Ferry came to Mazeroski Field over the weekend to watch Garraway play. And so that Martins Ferry is taking a look at Garraway, and you have to imagine that Garraway has their eye at least a little bit on Martins Ferry. And so I think you could end up seeing that game. And again, the winner of that would end up playing, if you do get that, barring any upsets, if you get that, you'll end up seeing the winner of Martins Ferry and Garraway, which would just be a phenomenal game on its own. They would play the winner of Barnesville UL or Barnesville Coshocton. So something to keep an eye on there, and something to think about as I think Garraway Barnesville would be a great game. I think Ferry UL would be a great game. Ferry Barnesville, any combination or permutation of these teams going at it in this bracket, I think would be really quality baseball, and something that would be really enjoyable to watch. Let's take a look at the East District 2 bracket, where you've got Harrison awaiting the winner. Harrison's the one with the bye. They await the winner of West Muskingum and Tusky Valley. They've ran into West Muskingum a time or two in the postseason in years past, and so there's a little bit of a history there. I think if you're Harrison, you might want to root for a team like Tusky Valley, mainly because you have more confidence in your ability to beat Tusky Valley than you do in your ability to beat West Muskingum. Not saying they can't win either one of those games, but I think they would rather play a Tusky Valley as opposed to, or maybe that's a fan mindset. Maybe they, because if you look at the back end of their schedule, they've played a lot better lately. But I think they would appreciate a game against Tusky Valley as opposed to West Muskingum. And if that were to happen, if Harrison were able to make their way through that first round, and again they have a bye, if they were able to win their first game, who do they see after that? Do they see a Ridgewood? Do they see a St. Clairsville? Teams that they're pretty familiar with. Played St. Clairsville twice this season, lost both of those games. Played Ridgewood several years in the past. It just seems like this district just runs through whoever wins Harrison and Ridgewood. But you gotta think about a team like Sandy Valley that is in the mix for all of that as well. And so, I think it's something that could be very interesting. Now, another fascinating note about this Harrison element, as they await the winner of West Muskingum and Tusky Valley, and they will end up playing that game on the 26th, is the fact that their next game would be on the 26th. So I think two things. if you want to look at the bright side, they've played better lately, barring a bad loss to Waynedale. But again, who wouldn't have a bad loss to Waynedale, the reigning state champions in the Maz Classic? But Harrison, they had a big win right before we spoke with Coach Valesco. They had a big win over Steubenville in the 8th inning. They had a big win over Martins Ferry, right before Coach Valesco came in here. And then I think just a night or two ago, they defeated Toronto on the road by a run. That's always a big win. Toronto, as we're going to talk about, has the 2 seed in Division 6 in their district. And they're going to end up playing Toronto tomorrow at Mazeroski Field. And then they also have a game against Olentangy Orange on Friday night. That originally was going to be the cap of the regular season, but they've got they've got a Wheeling Central game that might be hanging around there as well, that they're going to try to get bumped back. But even if they get it bumped back, how far can they get it bumped back, just so that they don't have such a long layoff? So they've played better in these bigger games as of late. If you remember, Coach Valesco and I talked about it. That was kind of the mark of this team, is that they're a decent team, but when they play teams that are bigger and better than them, they have trouble playing up to the competition. And I think if you want to look at the bright side as we near the end of the regular season, they have done a little bit better at doing that. But does that momentum slow down when they have to take nearly a week off before they play the winner of West Muskingum and Tusky Valley? I think that's something to think about. I think rest is always good, but I think that's very dependent on the way that they practice and the way that they prepare. I don't think, in their case, I don't necessarily believe that will hinder them too much. But again, that's why we find out. That's why we play the games, and that's why this stuff is so interesting to watch and to talk about. So again, those are the two kind of things that I'm thinking about as Harrison moves into this postseason. I'm also really thinking about taking a sip of this coffee, which I will do. I'll do that right now. There's no way to just casually do that, I don't think. Steam still coming out of the coffee cup here, which means it was also very hot. And it means we've got to talk about Division 6. We briefly talked about this, I think, at the very beginning of the show, by using Highland as an example. Who can challenge Highland, right? I think, they've got the 1 seed in their bracket. Very large district, the East District bracket in Division 6. I think if anybody's going to pose a challenge in the district bracket for Highland, it's going to have to be a team like Toronto. It's going to have to be maybe a team like Fort Fry, maybe Buckeye Trail. But again, at the end of the day, how likely are any of those things, to happen? Probably not likely, but again, that's why you play the games. Toronto's thinking, there's nothing that they want more. Obviously, they'd have to win their games to get to that point. Same thing with a Fort Fry or a Buckeye Trail. But, if you set that aside, there's nothing that they want more than to be counted out heading into a potential game with Highland and then end up winning the thing. And that's something that is, again, maybe not likely due to how good Highland is, but certainly possible. And so, once again, we have this continuing theme of taking everything with a grain of salt. And so that's kind of the beat on the East District in Division 6. If you look at Division 7, before we get to commercial break, I think Rosecrans has been playing very well lately. Strasburg has the 1 seed. Are we seeing a situation where those two schools are on a collision course to play each other on, what would that be, the 28th of May, right before we head into June? That's possible. Again, that might be the likely scenario, but again, you've got a lot of other good teams to look out for in Division 7. But I would not be shocked at all to see Rosecrans and one of the teams of the week as well, according to Ohio Prep Baseball. And so they've played very well lately. I think they've only lost 2 games this season. Strasburg has the 1 seed, so you know what that means. And so again, would not be shocked in the slightest to see a matchup down the road at the end of May between a Strasburg and a Bishop Rosecrans out of Zanesville. With that being said, we've got a couple more things to talk about on tonight's episode of Hometown Huddle. Before we do so, though, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come right back and talk about the softball tournament. We'll be back after this.
On May 22nd, you're invited to make a difference as we honor Monroe's legacy in true Masters fashion. Join us at Caddis Country Club for the Monroe's Masters Memorial Golf Outing in support of Pathways for Inclusion and the Monroe's Mission Scholarship Fund, helping families raising children with disabilities access opportunities in rural communities.
Register your team, become a sponsor, and help us honor Monroe and make an impact in our community.
Visit us at pathwaysforinclusion.org or click the link to sign up or for sponsorship opportunities. We'll see
you on the greens.
Out of the break, let's just continue to talk about Strasburg. We know that the girls basketball team is coming off of a state championship. How far can the girls softball team go? I'm not sure, but they are probably favored to win the district that they're in right now in Division 7. Now, they're going to end up probably seeing the winner of the 4 seed, Conotton Valley, and the 1 seed, Caldwell. A little bit of, I guess they say, whispers and intel telling me that maybe look out for Conotton Valley to potentially upset Caldwell. Either way, I think the consensus is that Strasburg can handle either one of those teams at the end of the day. But I think you could have some chaos before you get to that point along the bracket. But I think Conotton Valley and Caldwell, a very intriguing matchup in Division 7. Let's go all over the place. Let's just go to Division 4 now in this East District 2 bracket. The game coming up is going to be Harrison Central and Carrollton. Both of those teams won big in their first round. Harrison had a 5-2 win over Morgan, and Carrollton had a 16-2 win over Indian Valley. I think with a pitcher like Michaela Pellegrin, I think Harrison, and again being the higher seed, I think they would have a little bit of an edge in that game. But let's not forget that Carrollton's been on a little bit of a run here towards the end of the season. That's a team the Warriors have they got off to maybe a little bit of a slow start to begin the season, but they've been playing a lot better as of late, and that is evidenced by their 14-run win over Indian Valley in the first round. So intriguing game. I think Harrison and Carrollton has a they almost ride, as I just found out. But I think it's an intriguing matchup, and I wish they would play in a few more sports, because that's kind of that it in my mind, it's like the St. Clairsville rivalry in the opposite direction. You go about 30-ish minutes north on Route 9 as opposed to south, and that's what lies between Harrison Central and Carrollton. And so anytime those two schools get together for whatever matchup, it's always something that I'm taking a close look at. You have the East District 1. I think it's a foregone conclusion that here we go again. I mean, I say all these things without using the explicit term prediction or expectation, but I'm kind of laying out what I'm actually doing here. I don't think it's any secret that John Glenn is expected to defeat Cambridge in this first round in this matchup. John Glenn's got a pitcher, just a sophomore, has thrown nearly 300 strikeouts. So they already defeated Cambridge 14-0 earlier in the season. Again, all this points to in the fact that John Glenn has a much better record than Cambridge. All this points to the fact that John Glenn on this stuff should easily handle Cambridge. I shouldn't say easy, because winning is not easy, but I don't think they'll have much trouble in the Cambridge game unless out of thin air you get the same kind of performance out of Cambridge that you got in the Meadowbrook game, which I think Meadowbrook has a 3 seed in this in another bracket, and I think they're going to end up playing West Holmes, and Cambridge with a win over them earlier in the season makes you wonder if they have any kind of performance that they are able to pull out of their hat in the John Glenn game. It would be special to see. I'm sure the Bobcats would love it out there in Guernsey County, but I don't necessarily expect that to happen. I think John Glenn would be, I guess, heavily favored, if you want to talk about it in that way, to win that tournament softball game. If you look at the other side in East District 1 in Division 4, I think this district might be the whole district might be Beaver Locals to lose. Beaver Local has been a phenomenal team all season. Winners of the Buckeye 8, winners of the OVAC, a team that has just one senior, a team that is led by a bunch of freshmen and sophomores, and they're ranked number 5 in the entire division statewide in softball. They're going to play, as we said earlier, number 9 at Riverview. I expect Beaver Local to get the job done in that matchup. So again, very interesting to look at the both the softball tournament and the baseball tournament. And there will be a lot more to talk about next week on Hometown Huddle. And we've got plans for some probably high profile guests to come on the show. We've got just little rumblings under the surface that we're working on behind the scenes at Hometown Huddle. Before we get out of here, I did want to, in anticipation for, somebody's going to fire me probably, in anticipation for the 2026 high school football season, bam, I'm fired. I thought it would be really, really intriguing, because it was intriguing to me to start looking at what are some of the games we're keeping an eye on in week 1. We've got 14 weeks. We've got 100 days before this thing kicks off, but we're gonna fill the entire summer with a lot of football talk as soon as the baseball and softball seasons wrap up. But just a preliminary look at some of the week 1 matchups, and the one that I the one that stuck out to me earlier today was West Branch at St. Clairsville in week 1 at Red Devil Stadium. Speaking of at Red Devil Stadium, they were not happy with the fact that I think they only got 4 home games last season, and I know they lost at least one of them, and so they just said, okay, we're gonna have 7 home games this season. So 7 games, the first of 7 at Red Devil Stadium this season, is when West Branch comes in there. Now, when we get looking at, if you're new to the show, what we do at football season is we pay a lot of attention to the Fantastic 50 metrics, because we think that that Drew Pastor does a phenomenal job with high school football and numbers and, literally all of those things. I think the guy is like a wizard. And I wouldn't be shocked if, when those preseason numbers come out, if you're looking at a 20-point favorite or close to it with West Branch. Now, they had a great year last season. St. Clairsville had, to their standards, probably what some would consider a down year, going 7-3, finishing after the playoffs, finishing 8-4. Not quite the caliber of their 21 team or their 24 team, or certainly their 2012 team, which with success comes expectations. Now, it was something that I looked at several months ago and said, I think they're going to be a little bit better this season. They had a young offensive line, but they've got some guys coming back there. They've got their quarterback back. They've got a little bit more experience under their belt, and they have a schedule that is slightly more favorable than it was last season. They've got the West Branch game. They've also got a game against Wheeling Park. But it wouldn't shock me to see St. Clairsville be a little bit better this season. The rumblings that you hear within the valley is that maybe St. Clairsville is going to be a little bit down. Maybe some of that talk has come from their own program. But I'm not there yet. I don't buy that yet. I still think 8 wins is in the cards for St. Clairsville this season. And that's factoring in the fact that they might drop this first game, as they did last season, this time to West Branch. So, again, something to think about. They've never met. This would be their first meeting all time. So just a little nugget, just a little, what does Dirk say? My fellow host at Harco Media Network. If you don't watch I Got Your Six with Dirk Harkins, you got to check it out. It's one of the best things that you can spend time watching. He always says something to chew on. He has these things, and it's really powerful and profound ideas and thoughts and concepts that he leaves you with, and you kind of just sit back and you can think about those things for the rest of the day. And it's really good stuff. Well, here's something to chew on. Just a little nugget to leave you on your way. Keep thinking about that West Branch and St. Clairsville game in week 1 as we gear up for the high school football season. With that being said, I thank you so much for watching. This has been episode 36 of Hometown Huddle. We are frankly blessed to continue to give you Hometown Huddle every single week, and that is certainly the plan moving forward. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. Oh, I knocked them both out. With that being said, for everybody at Harco Media Network, I'm Drake Watson. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great night.